Hello and welcome. I'm Meredith McCarthy. I'm a clinical hypnotherapist here in Wellington, New Zealand, and I'm passionate about talking about all sorts of things to do with clinical hypnotherapy. Today's topic is going to be on indirect suggestions. And if you're interested in following the series, we're going to be talking all about hypnotic language patterns. So buckle up. I hope you enjoy this one today. So I've prepared a couple of slides just to keep on track, and hopefully if you've got any questions after this, please feel free to comment or send me an email. I do like to talk about different parts of how I practice with people and how that affects my effectiveness as a clinical hypnotherapist. So let's start with looking at a few slides that I've prepared. So when we're looking at that idea of language that bypasses resistance, this is often really important because a lot of people who come in to see me are absolutely scared of change. Even though they know that change is important, it's something that they're not really sure how to go about. If change was easy, they wouldn't need me, right? So they're coming in because they're struggling. There's a bit of resistance there. So storytelling is a big part of how the brain can begin to join the dots. So I'm going to explore a little bit about what indirect suggestion really is. What are indirect suggestions? They're phrased as observations, metaphors, or gentle invitations. So if I was to do an induction, I might use that gentle observation, and you just feel your body relaxing as each breath moves in and out. You might find that as you release that breath, relaxation grows. And it's funny how even the breath can be a source of deep inner calm, especially when you need it, especially when you want to reinforce positive changes. How the breath can journey you through those wonderful changes more easily. Can't they? Because you've changed many things before. And this is something that you can do again. Because it's important to you. It's not for anyone else. It's your journey. You're in charge of it. And you find as you breathe through this moment, drifting deeper and deeper into natural hypnosis, change happens quickly in ways that go beyond your conscious need to even understand how. And it's fascinating as we go into this idea of change, how change starts to feel somehow more appealing, especially when it makes sense to change right now. This is an example of how I might observe someone breathing and utilize that breathing and then start to gently invite them to think about how change can be possible and easy and so on. So that's the hypnotic language patterns that we are wanting to aim for. Not everyone's going to sound like me. This is just an example of how I go about journeying people. They're used to influence the subconscious mind without creating the resistance. So in that kind of example, it's very daydreamy, very invitational to have an experience that embeds suggestions within that journey. The suggestion that it's going to be easy and that bypasses the resistance. It's ideal for sensitive topics or resistant clients. Why we use indirect suggestion? Let's look at that for a moment. So we're bypassing the critical mind. A lot of times there is a gatekeeper, right? It's going, I don't think so. I don't want to change. But there's another part of them that wants to change. So if we can talk to that part that is ready to change and get the other part that's wanting to resist to come to some level of an agreement on a deeper level, it can be incredibly powerful to get on and help that client through that change. You're creating a sense of safety and also choice. So let's imagine this. As you relax deeply into the chair, you might find this feeling of relaxation into the chair supports you on a deepest level of trust. In that trusting way that support happens. And you never know when support's going to occur. Like that support that pops up into your inner thoughts that says, yes, I can do this. This is going to be amazing. So it's amazing how supportive language can happen even when we don't realize it's happening. Our inner mind can begin to journey us into action safely when you choose to, because the choice is yours, isn't it? Okay, so that's another example of me journeying someone through using indirect language, and also playing around with some direct embedded language there of hypnosis. But it's this dance. It's taking someone on the journey of possibilities. The third thing is you help the client feel the change instead of being told what to do. So you invite them to imagine as if change has already happened. What would that be like? And just think about that for a moment in a way that makes sense to you, in that way that helps you, that comforts you, where change may even begin to be happening even now. Because many things that happen start with a thought first. And with that correct thought, that right thought, motivation then follows. And it's just like a sequential, perfect journey. It happens exactly how it's meant to happen. And it can happen right now if you want to, as you journey deeper and deeper into that idea of change. So you can see I'm just sort of falling into the hypnotic dialogue as I would with a client. It's not scripted. I'm not reading anything here. It's just something that comes into my mind, and then I pace the client through that journey. I love storytelling. It's a big part of how I do this. So core language patterns that I would like to talk about, that permissive language. So you may begin to just imagine that perfect life, that life that you want to be in, where things are going easily, you're feeling confident, feeling secure in yourself, and you've found your voice, right? So that client might have come because they weren't feeling secure in themselves. They wanted to find their voice. So this is the idea of inviting them to begin to think about how that would be. And as soon as they start doing that, they start to stimulate new neural pathways in their brain. Embedded commands. So as you sit here, you can begin to relax, relaxing deeper and deeper as you move into this wonderful state of open suggestibility. But taking on board those suggestions that make sense to you, of course, because you are ultimately in charge, aren't you? You're in charge of all of those wonderful suggestions that you make towards yourself, that you are ready to act upon. So it's very subtle, but there it is. It's embedded. They're very clear commands. So metaphors and analogies, it's like a path through a forest that allows you to go into this wonderful state of aha, where suddenly you realize why you're here and what it's all about. And as you realize those things, you begin to uncover gifts within you, gifts of knowledge, understanding, that allow you to create more and more stepping stones into the future that you deserve. Right. So when we're looking at pacing and leading, you are here just breathing, listening to the sound of my voice. Any other sounds that are in or out of the room are just there in the background. In fact, they take you deeper and deeper into a state of deep relaxation. That kind of relaxation where, as you begin to notice the traffic outside, it reminds you of how quickly things can change, how we can move from one place to another, and how we can make the choice to do that. And as you feel the space underneath you holding you easily, supporting you, you begin to realize how much support you can give to yourself on this journey of change. I love playing with language. I hope that's exciting you out there. It's really tricky putting together these slides and thinking, what do people actually want to know about out there in the world? Whether you're sort of wondering, how does hypnosis even work? How would I become a hypnotherapist? This is what I enjoy, helping people to discover. I love training others to do this stuff. So I'm hoping that you're enjoying what we're doing today anyway. And if you are, leave a comment. Let me know what you like, what you didn't like, all of that stuff. Feedback is really important. So let's look at direct versus indirect. So a direct, you are calm. Indirect, you may begin to feel calmer even now. Another one, direct, you've stopped smoking. Indirect, some people find that they just forget about the habit completely. So you can sort of see the difference between the two styles. The power of storytelling. Storytelling changes lives. I really do believe that. Stories change lives. And if you want that client to have their own hero's journey, then storytelling is where it's at. Now, metaphors are like symbols, and that it speaks to the subconscious. How many of you have listened to a story growing up, maybe on radio, or perhaps it was your favorite story that you got when you're in bed at night and your parents were reading you bedtime stories, and you start to identify with certain characters, and it embeds within you in some deeper level. And I remember the story that I was told, The Little Train That Could, I think it was called. And it was about this little train that wasn't sure whether it could do what the big trains could. And it got to a hill. And I remember these words really, really well. I know I can. I think I can. I know I can. I think I can. It was like this wonderful rhythm. And you could imagine this little wee choo-choo train going up this hill, really struggling. But it got to the top. And as it went over the top of the hill, I know I can, I think I can, it started to get louder and more exciting. And as a child, it really spoke to me about believing in myself. So that metaphor sunk in. And I can remember even being at school, having this little, I know I can, I think I can, coming into my mind that made such a big difference to my own inner belief in myself to do something that I had not done before. So this is how metaphors sink in. They kind of make sense, but not every metaphor will be exactly the same for everyone. So when I heard that story, it had its own special meaning to me. So when you're guiding people through a metaphor, they will make it make sense in their own special way on a deep subconscious level. So it's not about what you think it's going to mean. It's really about what's the effect it's having on that client. And so the subconscious loves metaphors. Your client sees themselves in the story, and there's no pressure. They're just possibility. I hope that helps. So when to use indirect language. So early in the session, it's good for rapport building. With clients who have an analytical, skeptical, sort of fearful mind, during emotional topics, and to enforce suggestions without sounding too prescriptive. So this is really important that the client owns the answer. And I think when we're going into storytelling, the client can then come on board with that story, make it make sense, and magic happens. Okay. Right. So a real life example. It's interesting how sometimes a person finds themselves walking past the biscuits, almost as if the craving just isn't there anymore. This phrasing creates relief, not resistance. So how we phrase things helps a client feel like it can be achieved or not. So if you would like, you can go away and maybe work on your own embedded commands and metaphor and permissive phrasing and see how you go with it. And if you want to comment here on the YouTube video, please do feel free to do that and let me know how you go. Final thoughts. So indirect suggestions are subtle but powerful, okay? They're subtle but powerful. They build trust, they bypass resistance and support long-term change. And they play with tone, rhythm, and imagery, letting your language be flexible. I hope you enjoyed that today. The next episode is about the Milton model. So if no one's heard of him, I'll talk about him next week. But for me, I'm very Ericksonian in my style of hypnosis. And I am a great believer that the client has the answer. And I do use storytelling and many of the little nuances that we have learnt from such a wonderful master of hypnosis. So we're going to explore how Ericksonian language builds on these patterns that we've covered today. So if you want to know more about becoming a clinical hypnotherapist, go to nzach.ac.nz. There's information about the 1,000-hour diploma course that I hold. It's online, so there are live sessions, 48 in fact, for the diploma course, and we have fun. It's all about learning, going away, practicing, coming back, having a chat, and building on those baselines of understanding and knowledge. So thank you for tuning in today. If you like this, please let me know. And for now, see you next time. Ka kite.